"Sir, my mom isn't waking up," the little girl whispered, her voice barely more than a breath, fragile as a thread about to snap. She stood there in the grand marble lobby, a place polished and intimidating, where echoes of heels and urgent conversations bounced off the glass walls. Yet in that moment, everything stilled. The CEO, a man known across the city for his cold efficiency and ability to silence entire boardrooms with a single look, felt the ground shift beneath him. Her tiny hand tugged at his sleeve again, desperate, trembling, as if she wasn't sure he had heard her the first time. But he had. He had heard every syllable, felt the weight of each one carve itself into him. Her eyes, large, wet, terrified, were pleading with a kind of innocence that made his chest tighten painfully. He had handled crises worth billions, negotiated deals that shaped industries, stood firm during global meltdowns. Yet none of those moments had ever made his heartbeat falter like this small voice did now. Without thinking, he lowered himself to her height, suddenly aware of how tall and far away he must seem to a child who was clearly fighting not to cry. Her face was smudged, her hair tangled, her clothes a little wrinkled, as if she had been waiting somewhere for too many hours, hoping someone would notice her. "Take me to her," he said softly, his voice losing all the steel it usually carried. It came out not as a command, but as a promise. Something in the little girl's expression broke, relief, fear, hope all tangled together, and she nodded quickly, grabbing his hand with both of hers as if afraid he might disappear. She pulled him along the polished floor, her steps fast and uneven. Assistants stared, security guards instinctively moved closer, unsure whether to intervene or make way, but the CEO lifted one hand, a silent signal that he was not to be stopped. No one had ever seen him move like this, urgent, unguarded, stripped of the formality that usually wrapped around him like armor. The elevator doors slid open, and he stepped inside with the girl, letting her cling to his arm. As the doors closed, the illusion of power that always accompanied him faded, replaced by something raw and deeply human. Inside the elevator, she pressed herself against the corner as if trying to make herself small. Her lower lip trembled, and she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, embarrassed to cry in front of him. "She was fine last night," she whispered, almost to herself. "She told me to sleep, and said she'd wake me up for school, but she didn't." Her breath hitched, and for a moment the CEO felt his own throat tighten. Memories he rarely let himself revisit flickered, his own mother, her warm hands, her gentle voice, the day he had lost her and the silence that had swallowed his world. He swallowed hard, forcing the emotion down, but the echo of that grief lingered inside him like a familiar shadow. When the elevator doors opened, the girl darted out first, still gripping his hand. She led him down a narrow hallway he had never noticed before, tucked behind the staff cafeteria, a corridor that smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and old paint. At the end was a small break room, its lights dim and flickering. "She works here," the girl murmured, as if ashamed. "She cleans offices," she said one day things would get better. Her pace slowed as they approached a half-open door, and suddenly fear pinned her feet to the floor. The CEO felt her small fingers squeeze his hand so tightly it almost hurt. He gently nudged the door open the rest of the way. Inside, a woman lay slumped beside a mop bucket, her uniform damp, her hair falling across her face. One hand was pressed over her heart, as though she had clutched at it before. Collapsing. The CEO's breath caught. There was something devastatingly peaceful about her stillness, as if she were only resting, except for the unnatural way her body lay, slightly twisted, unmoving. The little girl let out a soft, broken sound and stumbled to her mother's side, shaking her gently. Mom, please, wake up." Her voice cracked, and she looked back at the CEO, panic rising in her eyes like a wave about to crash. "She's not waking up." In 2 long strides, he was beside them. He knelt, checking the woman's pulse with hands that had signed billion-dollar contracts but now trembled in fear of what they might not find. For a moment, one long, suffocating moment, he felt nothing. His stomach dropped, but then, there it was. Faint, weak, but present. A heartbeat. Relief washed over him in a sharp exhale. "She's alive," he said gently. "She needs help. Right now." He scooped his arm under the woman's shoulders, lifting her with more care than strength, supporting her head so it wouldn't fall back. The girl hovered anxiously, tears streaking down her cheeks. Is she going to die? She whispered. The CEO looked at her, really looked at her, and something unspoken shifted inside him. The girl had nobody. The woman had been working in silence, unseen, unnoticed by the many people who walked these hallways. And now, when she needed help the most, there was no one, except for a little girl who had been brave enough to approach the most intimidating man in the building. No, he said firmly, with a certainty he didn't entirely feel but knew she needed. Not if we help her now. He carried the woman out of the room, ignoring the shocked faces that turned toward him. Assistants froze, jaws dropping, whispering rapidly into phones. Call an ambulance, he barked, reverting briefly to the commanding tone everyone recognized. Now, but his voice quickly softened again as he looked down at the little girl walking beside him, clutching her mother's limp hand. Stay close, he told her. I'm right here. The building staff gathered, whispering, but no one dared approach as the CEO lowered the woman carefully onto a couch in the reception area. The little girl climbed up beside her mother, holding her hand tightly, whispering words through trembling lips, promises, please, love too big for such a small child. The sirens echoed faintly before growing louder. Paramedics rushed in, immediately setting to work. The CEO stayed with the girl, placing a steady hand on her shoulder so she wouldn't be pushed aside. She pressed herself closer to him, the fear in her body palpable. And he let her, something he never let anyone do. In that moment, he wasn't a CEO. He was simply a man trying to shield a child from pain. When the paramedics stabilized her mother and lifted her onto the stretcher, the little girl reached out, not wanting to let go. You can ride with her, the CEO said, gently guiding her. Go. She'll see you when she opens her eyes. The girl hesitated, looking back at him with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty, like she didn't want to leave the one person who had listened when she had been invisible to everyone else. Will you come? She whispered, and without hesitation, without thinking of the meetings waiting, the calls he was missing, the empire he usually guarded with iron discipline, he nodded. Yes, I'm coming with you, because in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not power, not wealth, not reputation. Only a scared little girl, a mother fighting for life, and the unspoken promise he had made the moment she tugged his sleeve and whispered, Sir, my mom isn't waking up. And he intended to keep it.